It's like the annual tax-free weekend on steroids. Governor Charlie Baker is proposing the state goes sales tax-free for all of August and September, citing nearly $4 billion in unexpected revenue when he was on Boston Public Radio last week.
I think we owe some of this to the people in Massachusetts and to the small businesses. They've had a terrible year.
But don't put together that shopping list just yet, because it's not clear the governor will get his way. Here's the Senate President, Karen Spilka, on our radio show a day later.
The House and the Senate have already passed the 2 days for August 14th and 15th. We probably will defer to take up the governor's bill on the 2-month. The people of the Commonwealth need our help to recover from the pandemic, and tax revenue does help us with the very programs and services that can provide that help.
So, to tax or not to tax for August and September, that is the question. Here to answer it, Jon Hurst. John's the president of the Retailers Association of Massachusetts. He's for the 2-month reprieve. State Senator Adam Hinds joins. He argues there are better ways to spend the extra money. Senator and Jon, thanks so much for being here. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Jim.
Great to be here.
Jon, why is it a good idea? Quickly.
Well, I think any time that we can return dollars to consumers, particularly those that have been really doing their due diligence during the COVID crisis, it's a good thing. The sales tax is a regressive tax, and let's face it, unfortunately, we've all been spending through our smartphones. Those dollars have been leaving the state, not being spent on Main Street during the crisis.
You know, Jon, every single quote I've read from you on this issue has talked about the benefit to small businesses. Why shouldn't we assume this is all going to go to big box stores that are headquartered in Alabama or something? Why is it going to go to local businesses?
Well, frankly, Jim, those have been the businesses that have gotten it since we closed down for COVID, right? Since March 2020. Now it's time to, whether it's a 2-day sales tax, a 2-month sales tax, some sort of public information campaign, we've got to do something to redirect these consumers. You know, we all got in bad habits. We've been spending that money online, and frankly, you know, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts is very fortunate that the Supreme Court did the Wayfair decision 3 years ago that allowed them to go after these online purchases, because that's where all the sales were. That's why we have a budget surplus, because all of us have been spending money online and frankly out of state. We need those dollars back in Massachusetts.
Senator, you know, in a normal year, I totally understand the arguments against this, but doesn't Jon have a point? This was a terrible year. Small businesses, which will get at least some, have had an impossible year. Your constituents have had a horrible year. Why not this year?
Well, it feels like, we all agree in the legislature that this is it's a good way for a politician to score political points, but it is based on poor tax policy. And honestly, it's not the tool that we need right now for a strong recovery. If the objective is to help consumers or provide savings to consumers or provide low-income consumers with help, it's an inefficient way, and it's not really an effective way to do that. Is it supporting businesses? Well, right now, honestly, we have strong consumer activity anyway. We're grappling with other issues now, including inflation. And so it just doesn't add up for the response that we need right now, especially, honestly, and this is why it's surprising a lot of us, is this the response we need to the big flaws and challenges we're confronting post-COVID? And I think, honestly, nobody in my district is coming to me and clamoring for this, but they are clamoring for help with childcare and workforce training and housing. And so it just feels like the wrong policy for the moment.
You know, Jon, $900 million is a ton of dough. It's almost $1 billion for those who are mathematically challenged out there. Isn't the senator right? Wouldn't the businesses you're representing care about the kinds of things the senator is mentioning more than hoping that 6 cents off a dollar, which, by the way, I'm a big-time shopper. It wouldn't get me in. 40% might, but not 6%. Aren't those things more important than a couple of extra bucks in the till?
Well, Jim, I would just like to see Beacon Hill do some shared responsibilities, return some dollars to those that have been spending dollars all along. Look, our employers have been hammered with a $7 billion, with a B, $7 billion plus interest, unemployment insurance increase, tax increase, just over the last couple of years. It's going to be spread over 20 years, all for COVID layoffs that were really under government policies, shutdowns and benefits, and really government. We need to see some shared responsibility from our Beacon Hill leaders to return some of these ARPA monies to our employers instead of taxing them to death under UI taxes.
You know, Senator,
Although
you're on the
we
tax
have taken
expenditure.
steps to try to correct
Go ahead.
that.
You go ahead.
Sorry about that.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say,
No,
although
go
I
right
have
ahead.
to be clear that we have worked to take steps to minimize the sudden impact, which I acknowledge on our employees for unemployment.
Yeah,
So
but it's
what I was
really
about to
an
say is,
amortization.
wait, 1 second, John, if I may. You're on the Tax Expenditure Commission, and again, tax expenditures is spending money through the tax system, tax breaks, businesses, individuals, etc. I know you propose getting rid of 3 of them, fairly small, not used that much, but there are billions, hundreds of billions, I assume, dollars in tax expenditures. Why isn't it appropriate to spend? It's essentially like relief, which I'm sure you voted for small businesses in some cases and consumers who are in need. Why is this different from any other tax expenditure that the legislature is perfectly fine with?
Well, I guess because we may not agree on some of the key points. You just said that consumers are in need, but we saw consumer spending last month was higher than in February 2020. And so nearly caught up to its pre-pandemic trend. And so the question is, how do we keep that up, quite honestly? And so we're kind of confronting a range of challenges, including inflation. I'll look at TJX, right? If we want to look at the evidence of where retail is right now, their stock, TJ Maxx, is all-time high, over $74. They're up, their sales are up over 9% over 2019. And so the question is, how do we keep consumer spending going? And honestly, I think the answers are things that matter to businesses as well, including childcare and the like. And let's not forget that we still do have a tax-free holiday weekend on the books coming in the middle of August, the 14th and 15th. And so, we acknowledge that there's it's a useful time to do that from time to time. But for 2 months, that's a big bite.
You know, speaking of big bite, Jon Hurst, a colleague of mine looked up this afternoon every single state that has a tax-free holiday there. I think there are about 30 of them or something like that. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. Nobody is even close to in this ballpark, which lends credence to the notion that it's more a political gesture than a serious one, don't you think?
Well, look, New Hampshire is 365 days, right? So, I mean, the reality is, and still some internet sellers are still 365 days. But look, I think the governor raises a good point. There is a lot of money on the table here, Jim. 5.3 billion of ARPA money. We had excess tax revenues of nearly $4 billion. We're going to get new infrastructure money coming in from Washington. What we need to make sure that this money is spent correctly. We need to have employers get relief on this UI, $7 billion tax increase, and help out our consumers, and not just see 351 gazebos built across the Commonwealth. We need to see some important use of this money.
I agree with John on
that one. Go ahead, Senator.
That we need to make sure it's spent in the correct way, which is exactly why the legislature is setting on the rails through the Ways and Means Committees hearings so that we can hear directly from businesses, from workers, how we should spend the $5 billion in federal assistance. We're seeing our own surplus at the state level pretty significant as well. And so that's what we're trying to do, is rather than just throw an idea against the wall, let's have a deliberate process so that we're looking at these generational investments and making sure that it's taking advantage of the opportunity for real change and long-term gain for the economy.
But when you say generational investment, Senator, this is one-time money. You're not going to begin a long-term investment in something with money that's not going to be available in a future year, are you, or are you?
No, but if we're talking about this amount of investment, so let's say, pretty darn close to $10 billion that we weren't expecting, that's a lot of projects, a lot of investments in transportation. We can confront the challenges that our childcare system is faced with right now. By the way, 1 in 6 childcare jobs have been eliminated right now. Yeah. 2 out of 5 providers that stayed open took debt on to do so. So there are a lot of ways that we could use that money, but we need to be deliberate in how we go about it.
John, I only have 15 seconds. Karen Spilka, Senate President, basically said, not going to happen. It's not going to happen, is it?
No, it's not. We're telling our members 2 days. That's what we went to the ballot. Remember, we put a gun to the legislature's head when they walked away from the sales tax holiday by doing a sales tax cut under the grand bargain. We got it back. We want to keep it. But we need to deal with this UI tax burden, which for layoffs and fraud, that was not the fault of employers. It was the fault of government.
We got to go. Jon Hurst, Adam Hinds, thank you, gentlemen, so much for your time. We'll continue this sometime soon. Be well.
Great. Thanks a lot.